deliver a speech regarding our speaker. Today afternoon session will be handled by Dr. Atasi Mohanty ma'am, Assistant Professor, Center for Educational Technology, IIT Kharagpur, West Bengal. His area of research and teaching interest, education pedagogy and curriculum pedagogy, then teaching, education and professional development, human resource development, positive mental health and well-being, psychological of learning, education for sustainable development, educational leadership, HR and sustainability. She has published more than 25 international journals and 9 book chapters and research papers internationally. She has published 14 and then area of research, full papers in international conference proceedings, peer collaborations, facilitators, intervention, and learning styles in computer game-based learnings, initial findings from an empirical studies in the proceeding of the 5th European Conference on Games-Based Learning and managing diversity in educational sector in the Knowledge Globalization Conference and spirituality and subjective well-being in the 4th International Conference on Integrating Spirituality and Organizational Leadership, how quality of work and life has been provided by Indian employees in the International Conference on Gender and Attractive Works, Sweden Indian meet on strategical thinkings. And she has she's under guidance, 6 PhD holders completed and 2 ongoing PhD projects. Completed the ICSSR project on a multi-sensory and ICT-based invention program for removing specific learning difficulties among children. And presently working on educational psychology, learning and pedagogy, online teaching, its impact marks education for sustainable development, HR and sustainability. As assistant professor and Center of Educational Technology, IIT Kharagpur. I request our honorable speaker to deliver her valuable speech, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor. Welcome to this afternoon session. Yeah, today we'll be discussing on assessment and feedback, enhancing the students' motivation and performance. Yes, as you know, feedback assessment can be primarily of 2 types. That is, one is formative assessment, another is the summative assessment. Formative assessment, that we used to have it intermittently during the course. It can be an internal assessment, weekly test, assignment, project work, time in the fortnight test, short test, all kinds of things that we need to conduct to know the progress, of the students in specific topics, subjects, etc. So that is, it's an ongoing process. The primary objective is to know the progress of the students, and it is also the knowledge of the result, that is for the students as well. Like the students, from the feedback, the students, they would be able to learn, know about how far they have made the progress. So this is the basic some assessment of for some formative assessment and summative assessment, but we will be focusing on formative assessment as a role of, and it is how it acts as a role as a feedback mechanism for enhancing the students' motivation, performance, then all kinds of academic potential like self-efficacy, self-regulation, all these things that we will slowly discuss on. Okay. So as we can see from the things that assessment is often referred to as, when we talk about the assessment and evaluation, primarily definitely it focuses on, at the end of the session, end of the semester, what you have gained, what is your grade, what is your CGPA, what is the grade point average, all these things. It comes to a common mind. That is summative assessment. But feedback is, you can say it substitutes, or feedback refers to the
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, you can make your PPT full screen, ma'am.
I have made the F5. Why it's not coming?
Okay. In the bottom, it is there, ma'am. Actually,
that is I have seen it is screen sharing is there.
Okay.
It is F5 only. You can just a minute. Okay, now it's okay. Is it okay?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. But again, it
It's
is not
okay.
in,
Now it's
in the
okay.
full screen actually.
Yes, F5 I have given. F5 I have given. In my
Oh,
screen, I can see all the PPT, and in the side, just a bar of the participants. Just a bar.
oh, okay,
Can
ma'am. Okay, ma'am. You can carry on, ma'am.
now can you see it? Can you see it? Because I can see the whole things here.
Okay, okay.
I just got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Otherwise, I have to close.
Yes, ma'am. You can press it.
Okay. Okay. So just a minute. Just a minute. So therefore, now in the present day context, let me give some background about the present scenario. Like in this online context, is a very challenging job. That is to carry on this assessment program, not assessment, because only choice is that we have to give them some kind of assignment project that they have to submit it at the end of the weekly module or something like that. But as you can say, assessment and feedback, and especially the formative assessment, when it happens in face-to-face contact, in the face-to-face classroom situation and the discussion, it strengthens its merits, in the sense that it gives us the clarity, it gives us immense guidance for the better preparation and improvement in the teaching learning process. But however, keeping in mind the present scenario where everything is online with remote form of teaching, remote form of assessment, everything, we can say that its effectiveness is a little bit lower in comparison when we compare it to the actual physical classroom situation. However, we have to adapt ourselves in the present situation, that new normal pedagogy. So how to bridge the gap? So that is also, there are so many questions in us, like how to motivate these online learners, how to assess their needs, primarily assess their needs, what they actually expect from us and what are the requirements, assess their needs, again, we cannot map their motivation level also, because they are far away, distant, sitting distantly in the corner of their different parts of the country. So how to assess their motivation, their needs, their attention span, everything is a challenge for us. So in this present scenario, it becomes a very, you can say it's more difficult right now in this situation to carry on this assessment and formative assessment, especially formative assessment and feedback. So bridging the gaps. So the total scenario, that means what we are discussing about the assessment in actual physical classroom situation and completely online format. So blended learning is definitely the most effective one. Even if we are in the physical classroom teaching setup, we blend certain things to enhance the effectiveness of our pedagogy or performance. But blended learning definitely is always beneficial. But in the present situation of complete online mode, so many questions, so many challenges are posing before us. So how to bridge the gap? So here, primarily, we have taken the formative assessment as a pattern of feedback that emphasizes on the student and the assessment of learning and can positively affect the teaching learning situation. So therefore, the feedback and formative assessment in terms of feedback, its major task objective is how to enhance the teaching learning process, how to enhance the teaching learning effectiveness, in the sense that both on the part of the teacher as well as the part of the learner. So that what actually constitutes this effective feedback. So when we talk about effective feedback, so on teaching learning, that is primary objectives, goals are like improving the success and achievement of the students, and to make them more responsive learners, to make them more, to make them more skilled and mastery learners. Mastery learning enhance their teachers, and for the teachers, it is to enhance the teaching strategies, teaching performance, teaching labels quality of teaching, rather we can say quality of teaching. So feedback has, the effective feedback has n number of objectives, starting from improving the students motivation, students learning performance, and they would be able to become independent learners. So they can take their own ownership, they can develop different study habits, they can develop the self-regulatory skills, academic self-regulation, they can enhance their efficacy. So teachers to make to progressively make their teaching more qualitatively, higher level of teaching effectiveness, n number of benefits are there. Hence, we can say that as a part of formative, as a part of assessment, and especially as having the formative assessment as its objective. So feedback actually is a pedagogical framework. Is a pedagogical framework in terms of assessment that is for learning and not of learning. So when we are providing the feedback as a pedagogical framework, so it's a framework for learning, for enhancing the learning, for enhancing the teaching, for improving the teaching. So it's a framework of assessment for learning, not actually of learning. So when we are giving the feedback, it's not of learning feedback, but for enhancing the learning, what we are doing, how we are giving the feedback, and how we are making it more effective. Hence, so in this way, it promotes the students' engagement and learning. So as we have discussed, like feedback has n number of objectives and the goals and the benefits. The first thing is that how to promote students' engagement and learning. And this statement is very, very, very relevant in the present day context. With the online education, online teaching learning platform, how to engage the students, how to enhance their learning. Enhancing the learning comes later, but students' engagement, because we cannot see how much they are engaged, how much they are attentive, how much they are involved in the teaching learning process. We are only distantly, we are just maintaining the process, we are just carrying on the formalities, but actually we are not able to assess their engagements, their needs and motivations. Therefore, so when we talk about how to make the feedback more effective, then definitely we have to focus on how specific it is. The feedback should be very specific, it should be descriptive, it should be focused, and again, it's better, it functions better if it is being initiated by the students. So the student initiated things like maybe that students initiated a feedback with a combination of self-assessment, peer assessment, etc. And it is time appropriate in the sense that when it is required, when suppose you have delivered the new lesson and these contents are there fresh in their mind, so that is most appropriate time for giving the feedback, and it should be suited to the needs of the individuals. So different individuals, they have the different learners characteristics, different requirements, different needs. Hence feedback, even though we give a general feedback, overall approach, overall feedback to the classroom, but after that we have to be very specific in providing the feedback to each and every student. That is, feedback should be very specific, subject appropriate, individual, and it should suit the needs of the individual learners. Hence when we make it individualized, because we have to cater to the needs of the individual learners, when we individualize the feedback, then we have to provide different kinds of strategies for the improvement of that particular learner, because he is having different learning characteristics, learning styles, different level of motivation, different learning needs, etc., and allows him time to reflect upon, and allows him time for the action. So and again, we have to also select the different conversation mode, different dialogue mode, different communication style, so to enhance the adequacy and effectiveness of giving the feedback. So learning feedback itself is very subjective, very subject specific, very learner oriented, we can say learner oriented. It has to vary from one learner to another learner depending on their needs, level of understanding, their specific goals, their strengths and weaknesses. Similarly, the feedback delivery mode also varies, communication style varies, everything is. So it is you can say it's a pedagogical framework itself for learning, how to enhance the effectiveness of the feedback. Again, So again, feedback is presented along, again, the research has said that when feedback, we're giving the feedback in descriptive form, in elaborative, in the dialogue mode, in conversation mode, it becomes very effective rather than combining it with the grades. When we say that, when we are giving that, oh, your performance in this short test is like A, B, C, D, E, or whatever, etc. So then its effectiveness reduces. So feedback only in terms of description, in terms of dialogue, in terms of conversation, in terms of narration, that is more effective than giving the grade along with it. So if the grade is omitted, the research has said that if the grade is omitted, then it supports the learner and parents to focus on the learning. So they become more motivated, they become more enthusiastic about improving their performance. So for the teachers, again, it is also important to reflect on the practices in the classroom and how these affect the students. And for us also, for the teachers also, feedback is very helpful in the sense that we, from the students' performance, from getting the feedback from the students, because at the end of the class, we also often ask them what do you want in or what are your separate expectation, or what do you expect from us, what are your other learning needs, like by asking different types of questions, know that what extra things they actually expect from us, because different learner has different learning needs. So it also gives the teachers a kind of platform to reflect on his own practices, own pedagogical practices, own content, own lesson plan, own you can say feedback mechanism, the tools, and the test type of teacher may test, performance test, assignments, projects, whatever he is using, is giving to map the students' performance. It also gives him an insight about his own learning practices. So effective feedback is necessary for improvement and learning, and it is influential in creating learners responsive to their learning and important in enhancing the teacher's teaching. So here another thing is that the more and more the teacher and students are engaged in dialogue, engaged in conversation, engaged in discussion, so the feedback becomes very spontaneous, feedback becomes automatic, feedback becomes a part of day-to-day learning. So nowadays, that is why in this online platform, this flipped learning becomes more effective, in the sense that beforehand we have already given them the recorded videos or the material, etc. So when they'll be coming to the online classes, they have already gone through the content, and now we can start the discussion and feedback. So in this context, in the online context, flipped learning or flipped teaching becomes more effective in enhancing the overall performance and feedback as well, because they have already gone through the topics and content in the PPTs, in terms of PPTs of the video lectures, etc. beforehand. Now when they are online present, they are present online in the online classes, now we can start the discussion, clarifying the doubts, giving all kinds of on queries, answering the queries, their doubts, all kinds. If they are actively engaged, if the learners are actively engaged, then in this online platform, feedback can be very beneficial, very beneficial. So for improvement of learning, and it becomes very influential in creating learners responsive. So the students now here, in order to remove this kind of boredom and monotony of delivering the lecture, this and that, rather will be more engaged in discussion, conversation, dialogue, and clarification of our doubts, and all, and discussing about the future assignments, projects. Maybe we can further talk about the virtual projects, assignments, all these things. So these things can be very helpful in online platform especially. So the teachers and the learners, both must. Teachers and learners both must act to have best outcomes. So here the objective and goal is that how to make the whole learning process most effective. That is to maximize the learning outcomes. Maximize the learning outcomes. The key processes that underpin the teaching and learning is that establishing the learner current state of learning. Like for example, when they are taking the admission in or entering into a course, we have to initially we can have some assessment on their entry behavior. That is entry behavior and what are the existing knowledge. That is why in all the first years in all BTech and graduation courses, their past learning, their memory, their learning experiences are being refreshed with introducing the same paper, the same subject, same contents, like for the science, that is physics, chemistry, and mathematics, or for the commerce, the basic accountancy and economics, all these courses, to refresh their memory, to update them, to bring parity, to balance their entry behavior or entry point knowledge, to refresh their memory and past learning experiences. That is why similarly, so before that means before starting a course and etc., we must know about their status, their current status of learning. Then again, where they want to go, what is the learning goals. So the teacher can also help them in setting their learning goals. Maybe that they have the distance goal, or they have very broad goal. So how to make it more specific, how to make it more content relevant, how to make it more subject specific. So the teacher can also help them. So that is in the informal discussion, in the initial stage of a course. So where the teacher can assess where they are going, what are their goals, what needs to be done to go get them get them achieve that goal, etc. in their life. These things are to be considered. That is it, to not only to establish a kind of bonding or to know each other's expectations, learning needs and the goals, but so that the teacher can also make the specific strategy to help them to assess their strengths and weaknesses, to become aware of taking the right decision and how to reach that goal. So different students, they have the different ambitions and the goals. How to help them in reaching their goal and achieving their goal, that is also a part of the assessment process also. So when the students are appropriately informed about the progress, they are able to identify the next step for learning for the next step. So correct feedback, accurate feedback, mapping the feedback with the students' progress, then suggesting them to adopt the specific learning habits, study habits, learning strategies, then metacognitive strategies. All these kinds of it itself is a learning process. Okay, so feedback is a mechanism for learning, not of learning, not of the content only, but for how to learn, when to learn, how to adopt the learning strategies. All these kind of things are the objective goals of the feedback. So feedback itself is an inseparable process of learning. So this feedback is for the learning. It's not of any particular content only. So educators should also prioritize the formative strategies of assessment over the summative. Summative assessment is at the end of the semester to give them some grade point, some ranking, some certification, for that matter, summative, that is. But formative assessment helps in each and every step to make the progress, to develop the competencies, to develop the mastery over the subject, and to learn new skills, generic skills, etc. So that is why formative assessment is more helpful to even to serve as an assessment to summarize the achievements. So if we carry on, suppose in the semester course 5-6 of formative small tests, these projects, assignments, some formative mode of assessments, then it will strengthen, it will help in summative assessment as well. Because at the end, when we all together add these things, we can actually map the performance of the learners at the end of the semester. So these are some of the specific objectives. You can say there are n number of objectives of feedback, but now to categorize it, we'll discuss on some specific objectives of feedback mechanism or assessment. That is first thing is that to create the responsive learners, because our focus is how to help the learner to understand themselves better, knowing themselves better. So unless and until they know about their strengths and weaknesses, their goals, their specific needs, learning needs, their performance level, etc., they cannot be responsive learners, in the sense that they cannot take the ownership of their own learning. So creating responsive learners, students must be encouraged to actively process the information and feedback received, known as the mindfulness, that which leads to the greatest gain in the learning performance. So when we so another objective of formative assessment or feedback is that to enhance the learning gain. from their current status to the status expected, from the actual learning outcome to the expected learning outcome. Okay, so that is and where so the objective of feedback is that to make them responsive in the sense that whatever feedback is being provided to them, is being given to them, they must actively think about this. They actively reflect on this. They actively process the information. So whatever feedback they're receiving from the teachers, they must actively think, actively process, actively practice those things. So to enhance their performance, and that is the whole thing is called as the mindfulness. Nowadays, we're saying the mindful learning, mindful practices. That means they are actively engaged in that feedback mechanism to leverage it to get the benefit out of it. That is to make them responsible learner first, to take their own responsibility or the ownership for their own learning. Then student-centered learning, where the students actively. So nowadays we are adopting this constructive learning approach. That is, whole thing is the student-centered learning, and the teacher is just a facilitator. So in student-centered learning framework, what happens? The students not only learns but also relearns, unlearns, and creates and recreates the knowledge by himself, because information resources are there. Online information resources are plenty. Teacher is there to just to facilitate, to guide them, and the student is there in the ocean of knowledge to explore, to move ahead, to move forward, to sometimes it requires unlearn certain things, relearn certain things, to construct and shape their own knowledge by creating their own knowledge and skills, because he has to customize the knowledge as per his requirement, create and recreate the knowledge as per his learning goals and objectives. So now with this age of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research and teaching, so everything that means everything can be blended together. Two or more than two subjects now. So many super specialization, microcredit courses. These microcredit courses to super specialization, and so many things, options are available for the students. Not that it's not strictly that you are only science-oriented science student, you are only engineering student, or you're only medical students. Not like that. Is much more flexibility in the education policy and the content and then the syllabus that anybody can take up the combination of any subjects to enhance his own talents, to learn the new competencies, and to develop the different kinds of mastery in different aspects, different subjects. There is no restriction, no things. So that is why. So where the students can actively construct their own knowledge and skills, and has been a part of educational pedagogy. Sometimes also the students, they also give us an insight about the new pedagogy. Also the insight about the deep learning, also because they discover, they explore the knowledge, and from them also often we get the feedback of introducing a new course, introducing a new strategy, introducing a new lab course, all microcredit course. So it's a two-way process. But in this student-centered learning, students are the they are the main key player, you can say, active learner and key player in the whole educational setup. The teachers also learn from them in the partnership with them students in the teaching learning process, and explore. We also keep on exploring our own abilities, knowledge, skills, and we also develop new course content and the teaching practices in this process. So feedback is important in creating responsive learners, students who are better at self-regulation. Here comes the self-regulations, making the students independent learners. Self-learner means they can have the control over their own learning process. They can correctly assess their own learning needs. They can better understand their own learning process in the sense that what are their strengths, so in which things they are good, in which things they are weak, and how to overcome that shortcomings, and how to adopt the specific strategies, how to search the information, where to get the help, how to customize the whole thing according to their learning style. All these things it comes from the self-regulation. They can monitor, they can evaluate their own learning process and regulate their learning process so that they can better produce the better results, they can enhance their performance. So self-regulation that produce the better internal feedback and better able to achieve the learning. So students, they don't sit expecting that the teachers to give the feedback. They are sometimes, they also take the they also adopt this, apply, or they just try out the self-learning exercises, self-assessment mechanism, assessment exercises, so that to generate the internal feedback. So they want to evaluate themselves, that is self-check exercises, self-assessment mechanism, etc., to develop a kind of better internal feedback. That means they want to know themselves better and better able to achieve there. So the internal feedback also, it helps them in framing different questions, framing different doubts, framing different questions which they can put to the teachers for the better discussion or the clarification. So before putting the questions to the teacher, they want to assess themselves through internal feedback, like how far I have done it, asking many questions to themselves, their internal self. That internal feedback help them to ask many more questions to the teacher, so that they will be better able to achieve their learning goals. So that the gaps can be minimized, their current situation, current position, and what they expect to achieve. So that gap can be minimized. Similarly, students' mindset, either growth or fixed, can influence the effectiveness of feedback regardless of how effective it was presented. Students' mindset is that mindset, that means our, it's attribution style, we can say. So those who are very open-minded, those who are the students having the open-mindedness, having very flexibility and adaptability to the new concepts, new ideas. So they're very flexible in accepting the suggestion from others, in accepting the feedback from others and working on it. But if they are very fixed kind of mindset, no, they are very stubborn, you can say kind of stubbornness, or you can make closed mindset where they cannot easily accept the criticism, cannot easily accept the feedback. They don't evaluate the effectiveness of the feedback, how relevant it will be for them. If they cannot assess all these things, then they may not get maximum benefits of the feedback. But whereas the students, they have the mindset of being open-minded, very very flexible, very a modern kind of, they adopt the modern kind of progressive mindset, then they can take the maximum benefit of the feedback. So depending on their mindset, their attribution style, their attitude, then the feedback can be effective or more effective or less effective. So the effectiveness of feedback, it also depends on the student's mindset. One is that self-regulation, like how self-regulation, how they can monitor, understand, regulate their own learning behavior. That is one aspect. Their mindset, because in a mindset, again, it's a composition of their belief, self-belief, belief about their own abilities, their own learning needs, their learning goals, and their approach to learning, that is open-mindedness, adaptability. So taking this is also you can say it's a kind of motivational component, attribution style. You can say it's a learner's characteristics. It's a personality attribute, you can say. For the adult learner, it is a part of the personality attribute, and for the young learners, you can say it's the learner's characteristics. So these are the factors, student factors, learner factors, which also matters in enhancing the effectiveness of feedback. Then enhancing the teacher's teaching. How feedback also helps the teachers in reflecting upon their own teaching practices. Like feedback can be used to modify the teaching. Feedback can be used to modify the teaching and learning activities to meet the needs of the students. By students' feedback, the teacher can identify where to focus in teaching. In the classroom, there are different, there is a range of individual differences. Students, the students can be the minimum of understanding level to the maximum of excellent, excellent scores, excellent IQ, or exceptional quality. So the range, depending on the range of diversity in the classroom, the teacher has to map. The teacher has to map the range of that diversity and modifying the teaching and learning activities to meet the needs of the students. What happens in a large classroom, like when more than 50, 60 students are there? So primarily the major categories, they fall in the average, just below average, and just above average. So the teaching practices are primarily catered to the needs of the average, average, just above average, or just below average, that range of categories. But when it comes to the individualization of the instruction, then the high performers and low performers may not be happy with that, because high performers, they're well ahead and they have the higher expectations, and the low performers are still slow learners to pick up the pace of the general classroom. So how to meet the needs of the students? So by students, the feedback, earlier what happens, we used to have the different tutorial groups along with the common classroom, general classroom. We used to have the tutorial groups, like in tutorial groups having maximum 8 to 10 students in one group. So we can, so that the teacher can categorize, then cater to their learning needs and focus on individualizing the instruction or clarifying the doubts, etc. for that small group of, we can say, small group of learners. So the tutorial groups, tutorial classes are there to help to facilitate the learners, which actually do not happen, that is not possible in the general classroom. So that kind of things, the students' feedback, the teachers, that it can, that from the students' feedback, the students are assessing the students' knowledge of the performance. Then now, after getting the feedback, like in terms of their performance in the short test, in terms of their performance in the class test, etc., etc. So then the teacher can, it also gives a feedback to the teacher that where to focus in teaching. Now, why most of the students have not couldn't do this problem, couldn't do in that way, or couldn't solve this problem, or left this question, that means the problem lies with that. To identify that gap also, it helps the teachers to identify that gap, that particular concept or content or the topic, to strengthen or to give a fresh approach to reteach it or to refocus on that particular content. Because teaching and learning are reciprocal, are interrelated, interdependent. So teaching and learning, they have the reciprocal relationship, in the sense that if teaching is good, then it will be reflected in the students' performance, and student, from the feedback from the student side, also strengthens the teaching learning practices. Okay, so where the feedback is not only important for the learners, but also it is also helpful for the teaching, because for the way the teaching can cause that learning, because both are reciprocal. If feedback improves, it not only enhances the learner's performance understanding, but also in return it gives the feedback to the teachers to strengthen his or her learning practices, then to move ahead, to move further, to adopt the better strategy, to adopt the higher level content too. So it's a cyclic process, it's ongoing learning and the continuous learning process. Learning, feedback, teaching, again feedback, again learning. It's a cyclic process. Therefore, the teachers need to be critically engaged with the research literacy. Again, in order to, similarly, as the students' performance enhances with the feedback from the teachers, similarly, the teacher's quality of teaching or performance will be enhanced when he or she is actively engaged in research. So research and updating himself, his own pedagogical practices, not only through the open sources of learning resources available, or attending the short-term courses or teacher training programs, etc., but also to actively engage himself in research. Knowledge resources are there, informations are there, etc. But how that means, how do you want to enhance your quality and strategy and the innovative ideas in teaching? You have to engage yourself in some sort of research, be it action research, be it empirical research, be it theoretical research. You have to update your knowledge and skills. And research, actually, it gives the feedback in terms of outcome, in terms of results and finding. Because suppose you have got the idea, because maybe that in the literature you are getting that this theory has come up, this strategy has come up, this and that. But in order to examine its efficacy in your platform, in your setup, in your classroom context, in case of your students, you need experimentation, and that is research. You need experimentation. So to continue to be a reflective practitioner, the teacher must engage himself also in the research activities and literature, then the current research going on, literature review, and active engagement in the research, both empirical or action research activities. So and that research, again, that research activities, that that research and that literature survey, etc., that it also gives input to enhance his or her learning also, because research also benefits, research also strengthens the own teaching practices. So now this is a model. This is a model given by Black itself. It is a model. Like if the teachers focus on reinforcing the view that feedback will help the students to learn rather than dictate how smart they are, then it enables the students. So he has developed a model like how the feedback can be most effective, and in order to make it most effective and maximize its benefits, then we should follow that we should design a model of the feedback. We should design the practices of formative assessment and feedback through some model. Like as we can see, the student is in the center. The student monitoring the gaps and self-assessment. Student is actively engaged. He is an active learner. He himself also examines, assesses himself, his own performance, etc. Monitors the whole kind of things, the strategies, etc. So when the teacher set the goals. Again, teacher also helps the learners in setting the goals.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes.
Ma'am, your PPT, can you make it in presentation format, ma'am? Yes.
Yes, it is in the PPT format only.
In a presentation format, ma'am, actually. The topmost fifth one is there, no? Topmost. You can click that one. It is not enabled, ma'am.
Can you because now I'm stopping the sharing, stopping the shares, and now again sharing it again. Okay. PPT is open.
Yes, ma'am. You can do it, ma'am.
I'm doing it right now. Can you see it? Share. Is it okay? It is in the PPT format only.
Presentation format, ma'am.
Yes.
Is it? Okay. It is. Okay, ma'am.
No, it's cut. No, when when I am making it full screen.
Okay.
It's not. This much because otherwise it is the contents are being eliminated. Can you see it right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Like you are seeing it in a miniature slide, in the mini format. But when I am making it full screen, the content is being eliminated.
Okay.
That is why I have made it even the smaller, but it's compact.
Okay, ma'am.
When I'm making it full screen, it is contents are being eliminated, cut down from the sides.
Okay, ma'am. Carry on, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So there are 7 principles. Slides. Okay, there are 7. There are different principles of the good feedback practices. Okay, the first thing is that to facilitate the development of self-assessment, reflection in learning. Yes, the feedback, how it is being given, it has to be based on different principles. Principles like how it facilitates the development of self-assessment in bringing the reflection in the learning. Then again, how it encourages that means teachers and the peer dialogue around the learning. The feedback, it strengthens a kind of conversation, dialogue, discussion between teachers and the learners. It helps in clarifying what good performance is. Like, for example, feedback can be related to anything. Feedback can be related to the content, to the criteria, to the learning goals, related to the learning goals, to the learning needs, and the criteria or the standard expected. It can be related to any examination pattern, anything. Feedback can be of anything, starting from the emotional state of affairs of the learners, their bent of mind, their learning needs, to the content. And it can, that means the range of feedback is much more broader. It's not specific to very particular content of the lesson. It can be of anything, starting from the learner's emotional personality, emotional and behavioral study related thing, to the content and the examination pattern. So it can be of anything. Feedback which you think, or the teacher thinks, or the learner thinks that is relevant for enhancing their performance and helping them to achieve their learning goals. And again, also feedback, it is a platform which provides opportunity to close the gaps between current and desired information. Like in every course, when we design the course, we have the instructional objectives. Similarly, after the instructional objective, there are expected learning outcomes. That is the desired learning outcome. But when the students enter into the course, they have the current entry behavior, like current knowledge, what is that status right now. So with that status, when they progress towards the expected learning outcome, then in between, the teaching strategy, quality of teaching, content, in lesson plan, instruction strategy, and feedback, everything functions, operates. So the major role of the feedback is that how to reach that standard level, how to achieve that expected learning outcome, how to maximize the performance, in the sense that so that the more and more students will be more closer to that expected learning outcome. The gap will be minimized. So to provide the opportunity to close the gaps between their current state of affairs to the desired performance or expected learning outcomes. So delivers the high quality information to the students about their learning. Again, what are the other things available? Like, teachers not only need to update themselves in terms of research and knowledge and lifelong learning, etc., but they also should inform the learners about what are the quality, what are the latest things happening in their field, what is the high quality of information available, what are the resources of information available, how they can get the good quality content and these and that information, resources and software, hardware, and everything possible which are available. And with the internet, etc., you have to just give them the link, the site, etc., to expose them towards the high quality information about the learning, about the content, etc. So encourage the positive motivational beliefs and the self-esteem. Again, another thing is that how to strengthen their self-esteem, learning needs, motivational beliefs. That means to constantly, encourage them to be an enthusiastic learner, to be an independent learner, to be a self-learner, to take the ownership of their own learning, so that they can make gradual progress, they can bring positive changes. So again, positive changes and move forward towards the learning goals. So learning goals cannot be achieved only through bookish knowledge, but it also requires other n number of factors. Then the teacher's role in terms of feedback also to give, to enhance, to provide that assistance in other factors also to help them in achieving their targets and the goals. So provides the information to teachers that can be used to help to save the teachings. Again, in return, the feedback from the students also, it helps the teacher in enhancing their teaching. It also gives him an innovative idea about to customize his teaching to the different types of learners, because every semester we are also coming across the new types of the students having some peculiarities, some uniqueness, some special needs, some this, and so varieties of students are coming up in every semester. So we are also, being the teacher, we are also exposed to different kinds of learners' characteristics which were not there in the past. in the lecture method or in the teacher-oriented class. Now we are also exposed to the new kinds of challenges. So feedback has the role, it is such a tool which helps not only the learners in achieving their learning goals, but also helps the teacher in exploring it, discovering himself, his own skills, teaching skills and qualities, etc., and also to learn about the new challenges and how to resolve those challenges. So now the giving assessment feedback. So when we give the feedback in terms of formative assessment, the objectives are primarily to justify the students how they mark the grade. So when we're like after the short test, when we show them the copies or give them the feedback, etc., that is to justify the students how their mark or the grade was read. When after the mid-semester test or after some assignment, short test, etc., when the students, they come to you, they just want to know that if they have got this grade or this mark, how could they get it? What are the specific kind of pattern of a scheme of marking, so that in each answer, in each question, in each part, they have got these things and submitted. We have to also explain it, how they have achieved the particular grade or the mark, and what should have been the answer to get the better mark, and how the best, that means the high scorers, they have, how they have written, how they have addressed the question, they have answered the questions, all kinds of clarifications we need to give it. So identify and reward the specific qualities in the work. Like for example, in the evaluation process, assessment process itself, suppose we identify that this student has written it very excellently, or he can, that means from their answers also we can find out how imaginative they are, because of what they have written beyond the course content, what they have written in terms of their own imagination, innovation, new ideas, unique ideas, or in a divergent way. So these things also we have to identify, and we can also apprise others about this. So guide the students on what steps to take to improve his. Suppose somebody is very poor in mathematics or in English or this and that, we have to give them specific guidance, specific feedback to improve their performance. So motivate them to act on their assessment. So that means encourage them to assess themselves through different kinds of other mechanisms, from peer assessment or by teaching others, by communicating to or discussing this whole thing from the seniors, or from different platforms. How can they get the feedback and get their performance assessed by others also, so that they can be more convinced about their strengths and weaknesses, not only from teacher himself, but from peers, from the seniors, from parents, from other experts also. They can take the feedback, develop their capacity to monitor, evaluate, and regulate their own learning, what we call at the academic self-regulation. Now, academic self-regulation. Now, suppose we have introduced a new pattern of pedagogy, new strategy, suppose flip learning or blended learning, or seamless learning, whatever. Suppose we have introduced a pedagogical strategy. So how effective it will be? Definitely, we are going to map it from the learning outcomes or the results from the end semester results, or the end midterm semester results. In between, introducing a new strategy and getting the learning outcome from the students' performance assessment, in between there are n number of factors. There are some contextual factors. There are some subject-specific factors. There are some technological factors. There are some, learner-centric factors, like learners. Here, learners' individual characteristics also plays a very important role. When we're talking about mindfulness in assessment and feedback, how mindful the learner is in assessing the feedback, how mindful is the teacher is in giving the feedback, how they are encashing it, and what are the peculiar characteristics of the learner, his motivational level, his belief, his mindset, his attribution style, all these things. So in between also, the two major important moderating variables are, one is, you can say, their students' academic self-regulation or self-efficacy, that is self-regulation, in that how he himself has monitored his own performance, get the correct feedback, and utilize that feedback mechanism for enhancing the performance. So this is academic self-regulation, which is an important factor which can enhance the performance. So getting the appraisal of his own learning, learning and knowledge and learning progress, etc., and regulating it, monitoring it, and striving for enhancing the performance. That is one aspect. Second aspect is that how the teacher has engaged the learners in that academic process, in the teaching learning process, so that they will get the opportunity to learn. So two teaching learning factors are there, which are, we can say, act as the moderating variable. One is the student's academic self-regulation, his motivational level, all these learner characteristics in one aspect. Second aspect is that students' engagement. That is the biggest challenge for the teachers. How has the teacher engaged the students? Students' engagement in terms of activities, in terms of taste, in terms of designs, in terms of course content, in terms of feedback, in terms of other things. So two important factors are there in between the new pedagogy or any particular pedagogical strategy and expected learning outcome. Two important. There are other things. Working memory is also important, because when we're talking about mindful exercises, mindful learning, mindful practices, then automatically working memory comes in. So that is, again, it is also learner's characteristics. So similarly, mindfulness, mindful learning, mindful teaching is one category. Academic self-regulation of the learners, their motivational level, their attribution style, all these things. Another is the students' engagement. So these are, you can say, these are the moderating variables, intermittent intervening variables, which also regulates, which also decides, or which also maps or measures the learning effectiveness, teaching learning effectiveness in totality, and the students' performance at the end of the semester. So, so the objectives are justify the students how they have got the mark and scores, etc. Identify the reward specific qualities, the what specific rewarding quality that the student has achieved during this process. Guide the students on what steps they need to take to improve their performance. Motivate them to act on the assessment. Develop their capability to monitor, evaluate, and regulate their own learning. That is developing that self-learning, self-regulatory skills, self-regulatory academic self-regulation, self-regulatory skills. So there are also benefits of this students' learning. What are the benefits of students' learning? As feedback needs to be very constructive. So here we can say it can be of we can focus on in teaching learning process. We can focus on 3 C's. One is that 3 C's that, and especially again in online teaching. First is that we have to develop an online learning community, which should be, because we cannot see each other, we are not physically attached to each other, we cannot have the face-to-face communication. So how to build a very strong learning community? That is the one C. First C is that community, that is to building that online learning community, strong learning community, which virtually, even though it's virtually present, but every member, they know each other. The strong learning community. Second is that now the learning process is a continuous learning process. We have to be, both the teacher and students, etc. We have to be continuously engaged in the continuous learning process. It never stops. Not at the end of the semester or end of the course, nowhere it stops, but it is a continuous learning process. And third is that all the time we have to think out of the box. That is, the creativity should be there, the creative thinking should be there. So every time we have to think of what next, what new thing, what innovative ideas, what creative ideas. So thinking out of the box, or creative mindset is very much important. Similarly, in order to make the feedback more successful, very effective, then we also need this kind of constructive approach. That feedback needs to be constructive, that highlighting the strengths and weakness of a given piece of work. It should be it should set out the ways with which the student can improve their work. It should be very constructive, progressive, positive, in the sense that thinking out of the box, or every time trying to make it more creative and constructive. Second is that the time is also a reference point, because suppose just after the test, just after the completion of the project, just after the presentation, etc., when you give the feedback, means the timely sense is there, because it is there, still there in their consciousness, just stay there in their working memory. So that is the right time to give them the feedback, so that they can actively think on this, think on the topic, think on the remarks and comments. Then again, feedback should be given in a meaningful way, not just you know, in some of the seminars, in some of the discussions also, some people are there just without any objective, without thinking actively, they just bluntly give some kind of comments. That is not relevant. So feedback should be relevant and meaningful in the context, with respect to content, with respect to approach, with respect to process and mechanism. So it should be meaningful, and it should target the individual needs. It should target to the individual content, and then the criteria of mapping that work, and the who is receiving this thing, who is receiving, whether they are receiving at the receiving end, the students are there, or XYZ is there. So what is their level of understanding, what is their expected level of learning outcomes. So meaningful in sense that it should target the individual needs, be linked to the specific assessment criteria. Okay, if it is related to particular topic, particular subject, then it should be relevant in that context, received by the students in time, just in time, receiving it just in time to benefit the subsequent work, so that the students can remember it and work on that feedback, and then make the progress. The constructive and timely and meaningful feedback. So it encourages the students to think critically about their work and to reflect on what they need to do to improve it. It helps them see their learning in new ways and gain increased satisfaction. Again, feedback, whenever the teacher is giving the feedback or the student is giving the feedback, it gives a kind of satisfaction also. Now, you can say feedback is related not only to cognitive level domain, or just not only to related to your understanding of the subject, understanding or bringing the better clarity to the topic knowledge, but it is related, very much related to the affective domain, to the emotion, to the motivation aspect. And our effort is to link to our creative thinking, to our lateral thinking, to our higher order thinking, so that the student, not just from the feedback, whatever he or she is getting, he can think out of the box, he can think beyond that. Okay, so helping them to see their learning in new ways and gain increased satisfaction from it, and thinking in a very different and innovative way to go out of the content, to go beyond the limit. So it helps also promote the dialogue between staff and the students. It also feedback also, again, it also strengthens the bonding between the teacher and learner. It also strengthens the bonding between staff and the students, teacher and the students, and both the parties. And also sometimes what happens, it also helps them in the who are the multi-stakeholders. Parents are also another stakeholder. So it also strengthens the bonding between multi-stakeholders. It is not just students and teacher, it also the third party, that is another stakeholder is parents. Another stakeholders can be your seniors, can be your alumni. So it also strengthens the bonding. So it has both the cognitive, affective, and behavioral aspect. Behavioral means when we translate it in terms of performance, that is the behavioral aspect. When we take it that as an appraisal format, we get the satisfaction, we get more motivated, is an affective component. When it encourages our intuition, or our creative thinking, our higher order thinking, our critical evaluation, it strengthens it relates to the cognitive domain. So because we can say that feedback is such a communication process which is linked to not only cognitive, affective, and behavioral domain, it is related to the overall development, personality development of the individual. Now, effective feedback guides the students to adapt and adjust the learning. Guides the students to adapt and adjust the learning. So again, it also, as it is related to all the domains and aspects, and those who actually thinks actively on this feedback and actually want to get the benefit of this. So it helps them in better adaptability, it helps them in better adjustment in the new teaching learning situations, new classroom context, new work on, even in the on the job context also. So it enhances the adaptability and adjustment to the new learning environment. So learning strategies, they can also formulate new learning strategies to adopt themselves, to adjust themselves into the new teaching learning context. It guides the teachers to adopt and adjust teaching also to accommodate the students' learning needs, because every semester, every time we are getting the different learners having the different needs, etc. So this also helps the teacher in formulating new strategy to suit to the learning needs of the new types of students, or the next generation students, or the next semester students. It guides the students to become independent and self-reflective learners and better critics of their own work. Yes, it definitely enhances the students' independent learning ability, making them self-learner, independent learner, taking the ownership of their own learning, reflective learner, all kinds of things. That means taking the self-assessment. So that the main intention is to make them independent, self-learner, adult learner, continuous learner, focused learner, and to help them to achieve their learning goals. Stimulate the reflection, interaction, dialogue about the learning environment. So it can a kind of critical pedagogy. It's a kind of to develop a critical pedagogy approach. Asking question to yourself, not only to yourself but to others, having the dialogue, discussion, interaction, and to how to stimulate, enhance the reflection on the learning and reflection, also to, you can say, to develop a critical bent of mind, both the critical bent of mind and the creative thinking ability. That is the motto. So constructive in the sense that the students feel encouraged and motivated to improve their learning. It has the consequences that it engages the students by requiring them to attain to the feedback as a part of assessment, to assessment and efficient, so that the staff can manage it effectively. So it enhances feedback as a whole mechanism, a pedagogical framework of teaching learning process. That is, its motto, its objectives to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency of all the staff members and effectiveness of the pedagogical strategies of the platform that we are introducing. So to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the whole teaching learning program. So efficiency and effectiveness of teaching learning program, strategy, etc. Then this is the framework that we are discussing about, that how to make the teaching feedback mechanism more successful. So here we can say this is the model of formative assessment feedback. The students monitoring the gap self-assessment. The student is the nucleus of the whole process. So he is monitoring the gaps every time he is evaluating. He is not only evaluating, assessing himself, but also searching for the opening, searching for the sources of information, searching for the help, searching for the new strategies. So when the teacher sets the task learning goals and the criteria, then from the course objectives to expected learning outcomes, now the teacher has set the criteria. The teacher is also there not only to assess the students' needs, level of understanding, but also to help them in setting their learning goals, or short-term learning goals, or specific learning goals. From there comes the, again, three kinds of, for this, when setting the task and the goals, three kinds of things are important. One is that domain knowledge is teacher's own domain knowledge, content knowledge is important. And he also be very, very expert, very fluent, very efficient in formulating the strategies. What to teach, how to teach, when to teach, what to give, what kind of new things to give, practical assignments to give, lab components to add, all these things. So this is the strategy of knowledge, how to deliver that content. Third is that motivational belief of both the teachers and to strengthen the motivational level of all the learners. With these three compositions, domain knowledge, content knowledge, strategy knowledge, that is the process-oriented knowledge, and the motivational and belief knowledge, is that the conviction of commitment, conviction of belief that yes, it will proceed in that way. With that, all these things, then it moves towards the student goals. With that, it helps the students to achieve the goals, to shape their learning goals, to set their learning goals and make the progress. Thereafter, blending it with the tactics and strategies, to learning strategies and tactics. Then gradually it moves towards the learning outcome. In between, so this is the process, the teaching learning process is going on. In between, when the student is there mapping his own learning environment, his own content and performance, etc., the student is also getting the benefit from these three, from the teacher himself, teacher's domain knowledge strategy, from getting the benefit from the teacher himself. Then the setting the help, getting the help from the students' goals, like and he gets the help from this student goals, like what goals he has set for himself, the tactics and strategies he is using, continuously using and changing and modifying, and the learning outcomes. So these three things, you can say it helps as a path of internal feedback. Because it's a kind of competency mapping. First month, suppose he has adopted certain strategy, and after that, after this first month practice, then when you evaluate himself, make the self assessment, then he finds that, oh, this strategy may not be that successful, or I could only get only 60% benefit, this and that, then he changed the strategy. So this is the competency mapping format. SWOT analysis also strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats. This SWOT analysis can also the mechanism they adopt. So from these things, that is the students related to his own goal, the tactics and strategies he is adopting and intermittent changing from time to time through competency mapping, and the learning outcomes or the result he is getting. So these three things taken together, it gives the internal feedback to the learner himself. So these are the paths of internal feedback. When he rechecking, assigning, adopting new things, etc., he is also getting the internal feedback, that which internal feedback helps them in getting the external feedback, or getting the benefits of external feedback. Because continuously, not only he is evaluating himself, assessing himself, but he is also preparing the next level learning gain, next level learning questions, next level challenges from time to time. So there he is also referring to the teacher. And at the end, then the performance outcomes comes in. In between, he is also getting the external feedback, that is dialogue from the external feedback from the teachers, from the peers and the employers. So these are the channels. So whatever he is getting from the teacher and having the dialogue with the external feedback resources, the teachers, peers, etc. Then, and getting the internal feedback mechanism, that is, these are the pathways of internal feedback when he is continuously engaged in these three practices. So both the internal feedback, external feedback through dialogue, and the teacher's knowledge, strategy, and motivational beliefs, the teacher's personality, teaches himself and teaches himself, and the resources available, and then ending and then moving towards the performance. Then the performance is the it ultimately it is achieved through this performance is the ultimate learning outcome, and the quantity or the quality of performance, that is, it is the outcome result of all these mechanisms, all these variables interacting with each other and interoperating and interfunctional and collaborating and coordinating among themselves. Then if all these all these domains, subdomains act promptly, like this, the process of internal assessment, this is the process of external. So you can say it's the internal feedback mechanism, is the external feedback. When all these variables act properly and interoperate effectively, then definitely the performance is going to be enhanced. So this is the model for formative assessment and feedback developed by the Black-Itter author. So similarly, this is also another model. This is a source. This is also the model of feedback to enhance the learning. Source is that David Nicoll University of Southwell. This is the University of Glasgow. So this is also another model. So the good feedback principles that we have already discussed, how the feedback can be very beneficial to promote the dialogue and conversation around the goals, emphasize on the instructional aspects of the feedback and not only the correctional dimension, but for improvisation also. Remember to provide a forward feedback. Students need to think about it, specify the goals of assessment, engage the students in practical exercises and dialogues. So there is no one way, multiple communication channels are there. Engage the students in conversation, dialogue, practical exercises, and self-evaluation, self-learning mechanism, and enlarge the range of participants in feedback conversation, incorporate the self as well as the peer feedback, the senior feedback, And teaching others also, sometimes teaching others in the group, peer group, that also helps in getting the feedback. So these are some of the practices given in that how the feedback should be practiced. This you can say it is the scenario that is the teacher is as a facilitator, and it's a small group, individual group, individual tutoring, individual facilitations, as well as the group discussion, dialogue. So these are some of the clippings where you can see that how important is feedback. One-to-one feedback tutoring, group tutoring, small group tutoring. Okay. So again, as we have discussed, the feedback is a continuous process. Feedback is a continuous process. It's an ongoing learning cycle. Feedback that is in the educational context is the information provided to the learner and which reduces the gap between the current performance and the desired goal. Like suppose this is the feedback which is regarded as the very crucial for improving not only the knowledge acquisition but learners' motivation, satisfaction, behavioral endeavor, all these things. It moves towards the learners, how the learner is applying it, learner's application. From there, then it moves towards the instructional adaptation. When the teacher has introduced it and the learners has applied it and they get benefited out of them, then the teacher makes it as a part of instructional process and strategy, that is the instructional adaptation. From there, it becomes a part of the instruction. From there, instruction again, it results in learning performances, and from learning performance, whatever new things, the feedback they get in terms of feedback, then again it becomes incorporated in the whole learning process. In this way, in the cyclic way, the feedback always strengthens the instructional process, teaching learning process. Feedback is a mechanism, is a tool to strengthen the teaching learning process. So for the effective, when we design effective feedback, four important vital factors are there. One is definitely the learners are the key. Learners are the major group of stakeholder, that is the learners. And what are their characteristics? The range of diversity, their age level, their level of understanding, their academic background, their socioeconomic background, their peculiarities, the learner characteristics. Second is that instructional context. In which context you are going to keep them or teach them or provide them the instruction. Instructional context, like right now we can say whether it's purely online, it's offline, or it's a blended platform. What is the instructional context? Then again, feedback structure. How have you structured the feedback mechanism? Like whether it is weekly test, short test, only theoretical or practical. What is the feedback mechanism structure the teacher intend to give them in terms of practice, in terms of practicals, in terms of lab courses, in terms of weekly test, in terms of MCQs, in terms of some creative ideas and new ideas, in terms of subject specific thing. So feedback structure and the feedback level, at what level, whether it is being given in the superficial level, in the very surface level, or in the deep level, or in the or maybe that in terms of developing certain kinds of skills, or it is developing some kind of theoretical understanding. At what level the feedback is being given, at the theoretical level of understanding, or at the practical level, enhancing the skills and competencies, at what level the feedback is being given. And the feedback has different stages. Like first, we can say that 3 stages, major stages. What is the feed up? Feed up, which is before giving the feedback. What is how do you, that is, you can say warming up for the feedback, warming up stage. That is before the feedback can be given. Students need to know about the learning intention. Why are you giving the feedback? Some background information. So that is called the feed up stage. Feed up stage to communicate to them the learning intentions, giving the intentions. Feed up stage clarifies for the students where I am going, what are the goals, what are the relevance of this feedback to others, and what is in which context you are getting the feedback, all these relevant things. So this is the feed up, that preparation stage before giving the actual feedback. That is the feed up process to mentally prepare the learners with giving them the information about the learning intention or intention of the feedback. Okay. So that is feed up. Then feedback is the actual information, actual knowledge of the result. Feedback itself focuses on monitoring and assessing the learning progression. Feedback, where it comes to actual knowledge of the result, knowledge of the progression made by the students. in relation to the learning intention, content, task, relevance, etc. And it is about how I am doing, how the particular student is doing, what progress he has made, and what progress he has made towards achieving that goal. It is the actual feedback about the course, content, learning performance. Then another stage is feed forward. That is the follow-up stage of the feedback. That is feed forward relates to next step required for the improvement of the specific task learning intention. Is about where to next. That means where to go next. What would be your next step for the progression? So how to sustain your performance, how to enhance it, the next step forward. That is the feed forward. What activities need to be undertaken to make a better progress, to go to achieve your future goal, to make a career in a particular thing. So what are the alternatives available? What are the priorities? What are the challenges? All these things are the risks involved. So to apprise them regarding the other things, other chances, other possibilities after that particular stage. That is moving ahead towards the next stage. So these three things should be as when we prepare for the feedback design. So definitely what is the first stage, feed up stage, the preliminary preparatory stage, then the actual feedback mechanism and the follow feedback mechanism. So when we design the feedback mechanism, we should focus on these three stages. Similarly, feedback, it has a different level as we have this, whether it is related to task only, task level, or the process level, surface level, deep level, what is the level of that feedback? Okay, so task level or the product feedback, that means what is the outcome? It is more related to the outcome. This is correct, that is wrong, or why it is correct, why it is of the top quality, why it is of the high quality, etc. That is immediate feedback is likely to be most effective at the task level when you are like whether the problem has been solved, whether the math solution has been correct, whether that is more related to the only task, whether the method in which it has been done, it has been solved, it's actually correct or incorrect. That is task relevant. Okay, that is the most task relevant, which task product or which says that whether the method or the way you have adopted the mechanism or the information whether you have given is correct or incorrect. Then the process level feedback. Process level is that how you have performed it. How you have, because it aims at understanding or focuses on how the student has completed a task, because there are different ways of solving the same problem. And it is the process related feedback is to apprise you how you have done it. How you have done it, how you have approached the task, how you have, this is a how of the process. It is whether the first one is the correct or incorrect, whether it is more of task. Second is the how have you done it and which process has been most effective, what are the benefits, what are the weaknesses, which is most cost effective, the how of the process. That is the process level feedback. And then in the person level feedback, that is focused on the personal level, that is related to self and content, little task. So here the focus is more on the student, on the learner. What have you achieved? What have you gained? So this, in summary, you can say, so it is on the whether by completing this thing, the course or this thing, after getting this feedback, the student has learned this new skill. The student has developed this new competence. The student has developed the new knowledge in the subject content. And similarly in this, we can say, in order to summarize, is that feedback is designed to move the students from the task to the underlying process and understanding. First is that that is through self-regulation. Yes, student, for the teachers is to how to engage the students engagement. For the students, it is self-regulation is most effective. How has he learned this academic self-regulation in terms of feedback? Again, how have you been benefited through questioning and feedback, which focus on the learning strategies, questioning, dialogue, questioning and learning strategies, which focuses on the learning strategy using the feedback and focus on learning strategies. Then how to adopt the different kinds of metacognitive skills, which eventually have the students become self-regulating learners. So here also feedback about students' perception of the feedback, students' self-efficacy, how it has enhanced their self-efficacy, self-regulation, how it has enhanced students' motivation. So feedback, as I have already discussed, feedback is related to all the things. It's related to cognitive aspect, metacognitive skills, strategies, learning strategies, academic self-regulation. It is related to motivation, it's related to performance, behavioral aspect like skill and competency development. So it's a holistic development regarding the perception, efficacy, motivation, competency, understanding, everything. These are all about, feedback is information which the learner can confirm, overwrite, tune the structure, etc. Whether the information is related to domain knowledge, metacognitive knowledge, or about the self-learning or cognitive tactics, etc. Feedback is related to what? Feedback is, again, it's a communication process, okay, in relation to the standard of behavior and practice. Again, feedback, how do you explain, how do you give the feedback in terms of what is your communication style, but in the way of expression, and how have you received it? Because how have you interpreted the feedback in terms of your understanding and perception? Feedback is conceptualized and information provided by an agent maybe the teacher, peer, book, parent, whatever, regarding the aspects of one's performance or understanding. Feedback, effective feedback may be defined as feedback in which information about the previous performance is used to promote the positive and desirable development. That's the Archer given by the definition given by Archer. So from the research experiment, it is found that some of the factors, which factors are relevant in influencing the students' achievement. Feedback is one of such factor. Other factors are reinforcement, incentives, whether it's internal or the external. That is most important factor. Then students' prior cognitive ability, that is the students' past learning experiences, his level of understanding. Instructional quality, instruction quantity, direct instruction. So feedback, then acceleration, remediation, students' disposition to learn, that is his intention, its cognition, its motivation to learn, and classroom environment. These are the relevant top 10. These are the 10 factors which are considered important for or vital factors for defining or influencing the students' achievement. These are the different types of feedback. Types of the feedback. Feedback is given in terms of cues. Its effective size is that clue, some kind of cue, some kind of clue. That is 1.110 feedback. Direct feedback, then reinforced feedback in terms of reinforcement, video and audio feedback, computer assisted instructional feedback, our goals and the feedback, student evaluation feedback, corrective feedback, delayed versus immediate feedback, then immediate versus delayed feedback, punishment, praise, and program instruction, where it's a self-exercise, self-checked exercises, that this is also kind of feedback, which is the negative thing. So these are some of the factors how you are providing the feedback. Direct feedback with direct communication with the with both the video and audio mode, and with facial expression communication. That is the most effective one. Again, yes, because feedback also acts as an internal reinforcement. Internal satisfaction itself is an internal reinforcement. And external reinforcement in terms of grade, high CGPA, in terms of better position, or in terms of ranking, in terms of preference for the different kinds of subjects, your preferences for different, your options for the different preferences, choice of the subjects, and then you could achieve it. So these are the external feedback. That means the feedback outcomes which are external in nature. And this is the difference between immediate feedback and delayed feedback. Yes, sometimes we definitely immediate feedback is very relevant because it gives you the immediate instant information. But sometimes delayed feedback can also be used, and also sometimes it is considered as the powerful tool. Like for example, when the teacher thinks of continuing, that means thinks of enhancing the sustainable effort of the learner. So there sometimes he also uses this delayed feedback, because to linger on, to carry on, that is to sustain that effort, sustain the effortful process of the learner, to carry forward his sustain his motivational level. Sometimes the teacher can also delay the feedback mechanism to enhance this resilience, to enhance his resilience and sustainability in the teaching learning process. So it is being given as per the requirement, as per the demand of the situation. So the basic purpose of feedback is just to bridge that gap, to reduce the discrepancy between the present state of understanding and the future achievement. Discrepancy, it can be reduced by students increased effort. Yes, that gap can be, it's gap can be minimized with the increased effort of the teacher, use of more effective strategies, learning, study behavior, etc., and abandoning and blurring and lowering the goals. Like, have to be very specific about your learning goals and objectives. And teachers can help them in providing appropriate challenges and specific goals. And teacher can also assist the students in teaching them through effective learning strategies, feedback mechanism, and giving them the sources of information, etc. Effective feedback answers the questions like where I'm going, what are my goals, how I'm doing it, where to go next. So these are these three things are again the feed up process, feedback process, and feed forward process. Then each feedback question works out at the 4 levels: task level, process level, self-regulation level, and the self level. That is a personal evaluation of your own evaluation and effect, usually positive. About the say model of feedback and feedback to enhance the learning teaching by Aicte and Timperley. This is the flow chart or the sequence of feedback mechanism. So again how to select the right right method of assessment for our own course. That is another challenge for the teachers. First is the engagement. What is engagement with the task? So these factors actually decides. It also empowers us in adopting a better method, right method of assessment for our own. That is your engagement, the teacher's engagement with the task. Whether you are teaching, what type of subject you are teaching, whether you are teaching engineering or maths or philosophy or economics or sociology. So engagement with a particular kind of task. Engagement with the learner's belief about the significance of expending the efforts to reach the goal. So again, when you are handling the learners' engagement or handling with the learners' needs, their achievements and goals. So then here you have to assess what is the level of learners' engagement and how do you engage yourself in learners' belief about the significance, the relevance of this subject, and how it will help them to achieve their goals. Third thing is that engagement with the learner's self-conception about achieving the desired goal. How do the learners think about themselves, like whether it is difficult or easy, how to achieve their goals, and whether they are competent enough to achieve their learning goals or not. That is another aspect. Then avoid the risk involved in handling the challenging environments. That means how as a teacher, as don't give them such challenging assignments will be just impossible for them and minimize the desired learning goals. These are some of the factors that will help them in that will help the teachers in thinking of designing the feedback mechanism, or thinking of thinking of the design the tests, formative tests and assessment tasks to design the feedback methods. Because all these questions when they are being answered by the teachers himself, and he will think that yes, answering these questions means I can achieve that means I can achieve or I can help my students, my stakeholders, my learners to help them to achieve their learning goals and the needs. Then accordingly he can design the assessment task, how much short test or information short test MCQs he will provide, how much small short test, that means 5 marks questions or assessment things he'll do, how much lab component, how much project assignments, how much experiential learning things, how much other kinds of ICT based blended learning component, ICT based presentations he will add. So he has to customize all these things to help the learners achieve their goals, enhance their competencies, and get the satisfaction and benefits out of the course. So keeping in mind all these things, the teacher can design his own assessment strategies or the feedback mechanisms. This is all about this assessment.